This is Dana Steele. I lost my mother, Fran Nicholson, to Alzheimer's. I remember being absolutely blindsided by the diagnosis. I thought I knew what it was, but I had no idea where to start, where to go, what to do, what questions to ask, or what was coming. So I posted on Facebook. My mom was diagnosed with early stages of Alzheimer's today. Facebook became my community and my support and my therapy group. If I didn't know what to do, you did. When Mom died, I decided I would tell our story, the good, the bad, even the funny, to try to help families and let caregivers know you are not alone. Speak up, reach out, ask for help, and remember there is no right way or wrong way to do this. I've now told my story for years. In a book titled Surviving Alzheimer's with Friends, Facebook, and a Really Big Glass of Wine. In a play, The Woman in the Mirror, which will be running the month of March in Palm Springs, California at the Revolution Stage Company. And now in a podcast. And now I want to hear your story. I want others to hear your story. I want to tell your story. This is #Surviving Alzheimer's. On this episode, we are speaking with my friend Mike McGuff. Mike is on the Alzheimer's Association board in Houston in Southeast Texas. He is the 7th Congressional District of Texas Alzheimer Ambassador. Professionally, he's a digital marketer, a blogger, and a documentary filmmaker whose first film, Runaway Radio, is a documentary about the station I was at for so long, 101 KLOL. That one is currently playing film festivals, by the way. And Mike is one of us. He's been through the Alzheimer's journey. He did it in his 20s, losing his mom to early-onset Alzheimer's. So why is Alzheimer's even a part of your life, Mike McGuff? Tell me your story.
Well, I had never anticipated that Alzheimer's would be a part of my life, but when I was a senior in college, my mom had a stroke and we just thought it was a stroke. And a few months later came a diagnosis of Alzheimer's. And I was like, that really can't be possible. She was 53 years old and no one thought it was possible. Everyone thought she needed to go get a second diagnosis, and it did end up being proven true, which, this is back in 1999, and you just didn't hear about people of that age getting an Alzheimer's diagnosis. It did not seem real, and that really led me into a journey that I knew would be bad. I just didn't know how bad. And I went through, even then in the early stages when she could still live by herself, I went through a lot of struggle during that time because I was living in Waco. She was in Houston. I would come back and visit, but I knew things were radically about to change. And I did whatever I could to come back to Houston to get a job to take care of her.
There was not a lot of information then, definitely not near as much information as there is now. It wasn't as easy to Google anything that you needed. How did you figure out what to do, and what were some of the things that she was doing that made you go, wait a minute, I'm not ready for this?
Well, I should say, looking back, there were signs that something was going on when my now wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, met my mom for the first time. She was looking for her keys a lot over and over. And at the time, my mom had started going to a therapist just because she felt like maybe it was depression, midlife, something was happening. Now, with hindsight, you realize that was probably the beginning of the symptoms. And just, no one would have thought that at the time. What was lucky since there was no internet then, I was fortunate she had a very good neurologist here in Houston. And she had some friends that were very good about getting information and helping me out. And, even when I moved back, we're still there. And I would say that's how I got through it. And my wife and I looked up information on the internet, even in 2001 when I moved back there. Like you said, there was hardly anything out there to really find. In fact, there's probably more misinformation at the time. I can remember one of my mom's friends bringing in a flyer, and I guess she got that off the internet, and it said that, well, maybe you don't have Alzheimer's, maybe it's cataracts. And the problem is you were just not able to see. Therefore, you're just misdiagnosed just because you simply can't see and maybe process information like you used to. So those types of things are still going around. And in fact, maybe some ways that's even worse considering how prevalent the internet is now.
Oh, I get a lot of that. I get a lot of suggestions and a lot of people that want to be on this podcast to talk about their miracle cure. It is definitely out there. I was in a position where I'd had already had several careers, and I was older, and I had a husband who had a good job, and I had money in the bank. So, and she had money in the bank. So, I- you know, I had to give up my career, which was sad to me, but I was able to, create another career on the other side. Then I talk to young people who their career is blowing and going. They're in their late 20s, they're in their 30s, they're in their early 40s, and they have to give up everything in order to move in with mom or dad or whoever and take care of their loved one. You were just starting out. You were so young. What did this do to you in your career and what you were studying and what you were thinking you were going to be in your early 20s?
Well, at that time, I was working for a TV station in Waco, and I actually got an offer to be the weekend anchor. And also, I was going to anchor a newscast in College Station because we were in Waco, but they had a satellite station. So that was sitting right there before me. And I realized at that point, I couldn't do it. And I think they thought it was strange how I was turning it down. But at that time, I was trying to get to Houston. So I had been talking with people at Channel 13, and that actually just took some time. And luckily, I got that job, which was behind the scenes as a producer, but I was happy to be there. It was way more money, and it got me into Houston. So I got very lucky in the sense that I had done both reporting and what they called the webmaster at the TV station. So I actually did two jobs for the price of one, which is great for broadcasters. They always like that, just to get you to do two jobs for a little bit more. But by being that open to things, that one of those essentially got me to Houston, and then the other one got me a job once I got here, because I was only on a temporary web assignment, and then they moved me into news because I had reporting experience. It's kind of an off-air reporter as a producer. So luckily I had pursued both of those things, and it paid off in the end.
Well, and this is obviously something you wanted to do with your life. So here you are in TV, and then you quit. Why did you quit?
I quit because I realized after my dad died in 2002, then my mom died in 2005. And I realized after a few years of that, I had never really processed things. And I was just filled with rage and anger. And we realized that we had our first son, and I kind of thought about it. There had been that show on ABC about a professor who gave his last lecture, and I don't remember the name, but he talked about lessons he had learned in life, and one of those was, you never look back, sitting at your desk your whole career, and are thankful that you spent more time at work and not with your family. And I realized if my mom was diagnosed at 53, that could happen to me. And so I thought this is a great time because we could afford for me to leave, and actually having to pay for childcare is a whole nother thing in a lot of ways. That was a lot of money. So I decided to stay at home with my son, and then we had our second son. And so I always figured no matter what happens in the future, at least they will know me from that time. And I got a lot of time with them.
A sidebar here. I'm glad you mentioned the last lecture. I'd completely forgotten that. That is one of my favorite books that I used to go back and read. I'll go back and read how Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, because the tenets never change. And I used to go back and read the last lecture, and I think I need to go back and read that again as well, because like you, I was sad when I lost my mom, but I went through those other stages of anger and rage and guilt and a lot of different things. But by the way, I will put a link to the last lecture in the show notes for this particular podcast episode. It's Randy Pausch. There's also a documentary, and if you get a chance to see the documentary and read the book, it's just it's truly life changing. What are some of the things I've been talking to a lot of people recently, Mike, about those of us who have gone through it and are on this side of it, and it's not something that ever leaves your life. I said to Charlie, there was so much darkness when mom died. And he immediately said, oh, there's still darkness. You still have a lot of darkness. You've just learned to hide it better. Do you feel like you still carry a lot of that with you? Or is it just because you and I live Alzheimer's on a daily basis now?
Oh, I think that's still there. I mean, my wife will joke about sometimes that darkness is there. I don't think it will ever truly go away. I don't think it can after you go through something like that. I'm sure it changes you. It changes the way your brain works because you have seen such horror and especially of a loved one like our moms, and it stays with you forever. I mean, I can sit here and talk about it and get teared up just talking about it. So it's always there, and I do my best to push it down, but it's always there right under the surface for sure.
And it is something you and I live every day. I do a podcast. I wrote a book. I'm writing a new book. I post and overshare on social media platforms, but it's because I'm constantly being asked by people, this happened, what do I do? This happened, what do I do? Well, you're doing the same thing. In fact, you are advocating on behalf of Alzheimer's patients and families in the highest halls of the United States Congress and Senate. Tell me a little bit about what you do there as an Alzheimer's advocate.
Well, I can say that for me, that is a lot easier than being a caregiver or volunteering directly with people involved with the disease at this point. I'm not sure even in what you're doing, I don't think I could deal with it that closely. And I feel like I can do my part by doing the legislative work because it's not there in front of me. It's more of an abstract issue. And it's probably a way of not dealing with it in a way, but still being involved. And it's just lucky that I met someone at a meeting here in town who worked for the association. I said, oh, my mom died of that. And they said, we could use someone like you to go to Congress. We have our asks for different legislation, for money for research. And I thought, well, that's something that I can possibly do because I have a blog, I do have an audience that I can, get help with on this and kind of cheer me on. And it has worked out well. I've worked with Congresswoman Lizzie Fletcher, Texas District 7 for a number of years now, and I've seen her in Houston. I've seen her in DC, and each year we have different asks. The one that meant the most to me was our act concerning younger onset, because a lot of people were too young to be able to get benefits. They were under the age of 60. So this legislation that eventually passed was opening up for those victims like my mom more opportunity for aid if they develop the disease early in life. And I'm also proud of what I did in the Texas legislature this year. We got a bill passed that will require more training for those in assisted living facilities, that they will have more training for Alzheimer's. And it's just a couple hours a year, but that can go a long way just because everyone who comes in contact with a patient in one of those facilities could have a negative impact if they don't understand what's happening. And just a little bit of training can go a long way in the way they interact with someone.
Mike McGuff, a media blogger, Houston personality, media personality, whether you like it or not, Mike. But Mike lost his mom to early onset Alzheimer's. I lost my mom, of course, Fran Nicholson, to Alzheimer's. And
I really wanted to talk to Mike about some of the things he does. And you know what, Mike, stick around because when we come back, I want to talk to you about let's tell people what they can be doing. So I can have you for a few more minutes.
Sure.
We'll be back with more from Mike, including what happens after you lose someone you love so much to Alzheimer's and how you can get involved in the future that we are all pretty much looking at. Also, a reminder, there's a link to the Randy Pausch book and his actual last lecture on this episode's description. Read the book, watch the lecture. I promise it is life-saving. We'll be right back. This podcast is brought to you in part by the book Surviving Alzheimer's with Friends, Facebook, and a really big glass of wine. When Mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, I posted it on Facebook. What started as a way to let friends and family know Mom had Alzheimer's turned into a support system for me, and from that turned into a support system and a community. The first half of the book is the Facebook post, and that's to give people a sense of you're not alone. There's no right, there's no wrong. It's okay to laugh at inappropriate things. It's okay to cry. It's okay to say bad words, drink wine, and throw things. The other half of the book is very important resources for caregivers. The one thing I want you to take away is you never know. Love your family. Love everyone. Take every adventure. Do everything, but also make sure you have everything ready to go and you're organized in the background so that when all is said and done, you have lived today. I wish I had known. And if I wish I had known, I think there's other people that wish they could know what's coming next. Surviving Alzheimer's with Friends, Facebook, and a really big glass of wine is available at Amazon in paperback and Kindle versions. And now, back to the podcast, Surviving Alzheimer's with Dana Steele. We're back with media blogger, Alzheimer's advocate, and filmmaker Mike McGuff, who lost his mom to early-onset Alzheimer's.
Give us some ideas of what others can do to advocate for Alzheimer's, for a cause, for a cure, for caregivers, whatever.
Well, I mean, one thing right now, this is the time of year that is Alzheimer's walk season. Of course, Dana and I have a team together, whether you give money to our team or to any other team across the country. What you're doing is you are helping support care and support for the caregivers, for the Alzheimer's patients through the association. And that money also goes to research. That would be, I would think, one of the easiest things to do for anyone just looking to get involved. If you show up to a walk, you're going to meet a lot of people, especially if you're a caregiver, you're going to meet other caregivers, and it's going to be an inspirational experience. And I've talked to people there who have just lost their parents. And I think for them, it is a way to start the healing to attend the walks, because everyone there shares the common goal, which is to end the disease, to get over the disease. And I think just knowing that you're in a group of like-minded people who have experienced the same type of thing is always important.
And I always encourage people to tell your story. Again, you do not have to be as vocal and as out front as Mike and I are, but tell your story, because not only does it help you to talk about it, it is a form of therapy. So whether it's with a support group or it's on social media or it's with your whatever your religious affiliation is, a lot of medical hospitals, medical organizations near you have Alzheimer's support groups, a community group. Tell your story, find a group, because not only will it help you, but it also lets others know they're not alone. Let's go back to, you were so young. I say you were so young. You were in your 20s and probably early 30s maybe, but did you have anyone to talk to, or was it just you and your wife?
No, at that point, it was just my wife and I. And, maybe I talked to some people at work. And one of my, some of my mom's friends were very good at being there, and I could talk to them. But it was a whirlwind. It really was. And looking back, I don't even know how I got through it. I guess I just knew that it had to be done. So, when she died in 2005, I went through that year and I could not sleep. I only had nightmares about Alzheimer's. And it was a tough year. And that's when, at the association, they talk about the caregivers need support too. They need someone to take care of them. And I totally realized that. And at the time, these were different times than they are now. And I had a social worker saying that I should attend therapy after this. But, I didn't want to lose my job. And back then, corporations weren't as nice as maybe they are now about giving people time for mental health. That was really not in the conversation back in 2005. So if I
No,
could
and
do
you
it
know
over.
what? A lot of companies are doing. I wanted to jump in here real quick with this because maybe we have a CEO or a vice president or an HR person listening. Companies are getting better about offering personal growth type programs during maybe a lunch and learn or that sort of thing for their employees. Google does it a lot, but a lot of companies are doing it, whether it's around parenting, childcare, mental health, exercise, and well-being. But what I'm trying to do is encourage companies to reach out to me, reach out to somebody like Mike. We will come and talk to your employees because whether you know it or not, there are a good number of your employees who are probably dealing with Alzheimer's and dementia with maybe a partner or their mom or their dad or their grandparents, and you need to give them the opportunity to talk about that. And you know what? And I encourage everyone to educate yourself.
I think there's still a lot of misconceptions. And one that the Alzheimer's Association is really working on is how much affected marginal communities are right now with it. It is really affecting African American and Hispanics communities in a big way. And I don't know if that's just starting to be more of a conversation. But I think that's definitely an area that the association is trying to reach out to. And, that affects research because if they are not showing up, if those communities are not showing up for trials, then we're not going to get a full picture of why this is happening. Everyone needs to be involved. So there has been a great outreach. So if anyone, can really spread the word on that, I think that will go a long way.
That's perfect because I was getting ready to go into, and you can get involved in clinical trials. All you got to do is look up your town or your nearby hospital and just put Alzheimer's or dementia clinical trials and get involved at any age. At any age, they are looking for all kinds of people. There was just an article though that in the Hispanic community, the Alzheimer's rates are 1.5 times higher, and in the Black communities. So yes, we all have to get involved at all ages and across the board, no matter who you are or what color your skin is. But we've got to make sure these marginal communities are being included in all of these clinical trials. In 5 to 10 years, we're going to be at pandemic levels, and families aren't prepared. They don't know what to do, they don't know where to go, and they don't have the money saved. That's a very personal question. Was your mom living with you? Did you have to rely on a senior facility? It's expensive. How did you pay for it?
Well, I first moved back into my old bedroom that I grew up in, into a townhouse where she was living. So I tried to live as frugally as possible. And here I'm also, trying to pay off student debt and just debt from working at a low paying job in television in a small market. I mean, you have to almost live off credit card bills with that too. So that was a major struggle. And, there wasn't a lot of going out in my 20s and having a lot of fun and buying new cars. I had a very inexpensive car at the time that I held on for a long time. We just had to juggle. Eventually, I did have to put her into a facility because I couldn't be there during the day. And I was getting married. And it seemed like the logical thing to do, and it did help, but there were struggles there too. I can't say that all of these places are ready for Alzheimer's, especially back then. Now they have what are called memory centers. I assume those are better. I assume there's extra training for Alzheimer's, but back then that really didn't exist as much.
Well, even with my mom, I ended up moving her 6 times, and The fourth time was actually to the memory care side where I thought things would be better. And they weren't. It wasn't better. It was not better. They called it memory care and they had the doors locked and they maybe had wider hallways. Things were a little safer. But I remember coming to visit my mom and everybody had gone on lunch break except for one. And there was one young caregiver in charge of 30 memory care patients who are, doing crazy things all at once. And I would come in and mom would have a black eye. I would come in, mom would have bloody hands. I came in one day, mom had feces on her feet. It was just like, I have got to get her out of here. So, no, I encourage people. Now, again, that was 8 years ago, 9 years ago, but I do encourage people to really vet these places. Just because they say they are memory care, go and look at it and come and visit unannounced. But that's a whole other, do this as a whole other episode. Mike, I really appreciate you talking to me. I know we talk about this a lot and we're probably going to have to talk about it the rest of our lives to help others. But any parting words to somebody listening to this that's just starting this journey? It's because it's a job you don't ask for, and it's a job you don't train for, and it's a job you have no choice.
Well, I do have some sense of optimism just because I'm on the board of the Houston Alzheimer's Association chapter, and we have neuroscientists sitting on that board, and they seem to be more excited about the therapies coming out. There's at least 3 therapies coming out now, and possibly we will have tests to diagnose it early. I mean, it's probably too late for me, but in the future, it will be able to help people, it sounds like. And, we always hear about different therapies that end up not working, and that's been going on forever, it seems like. But they really do seem excited about what's coming. So at least we have some sense of optimism finally, because let's be honest, when I started volunteering with the association, they were still giving Aricept, which is the same medication that my mom was on. Things had not changed in, more than a decade at that point. So at least now we're seeing some promise.
Before I let you go, how can people find you? How can they find your blog?
Oh, just it's MikeMcGuff.com, or you can just Google search Mike McGuff and you will find me. And of course, you will find information on Alzheimer's off and on my blog, or you can contact me and I can get you in contact with someone who can help you.
If you'd like to donate to the Alzheimer's Walk team that Mike and I have put together, there's a link in this episode's description. Or you can always find a team near you. Just ask around. I will bet at least one of your friends is involved in a walk. And if you'd like to tell me your story, I'd love to hear it. There's a link for that also in the episode, or you can reach me through the website, survivingalzheimerspodcast.com. Same place if you're interested in more information on a workshop for your company employees. Most of all, thanks for listening. And if you get a chance, please subscribe to and share this podcast with your friends and family. We are all in this journey together. Thanks for listening to #Surviving Alzheimer's. The podcast is produced by Blue Squirrel Productions and JFA Entertainment. Dana Steele, me, executive producer. It's brought to you by the book Surviving Alzheimer's, with friends, Facebook, and a really big glass of wine, available in paperback and Kindle on Amazon. You'll be able to see the play, The Woman in the Mirror, in Palm Springs, California at the Revolution Stage Company in March of 2024. The original music in the podcast, I Remember, was written and is performed by Jeannie Cunningham. If you have questions, something you'd like to share, or you'd like to tell me your story, you'll find the corresponding links in this episode's description. And do me a favor, please subscribe and share this podcast with your friends and family. And as Mom always said, I love you, a bushel and a peck, and a hug around the neck.